Thank you, Cahirla. Lascian Corla. I'll be fairly brief because I know that other people may want to get in on this. Look, I suppose most people sometimes wonder, what do we do in here? What is the purpose of the legislation that we bring into this House? And earlier on this evening we saw how we voted to ensure that people in the public service receive some of the money that's been taken away during very tough times back to them in future budgets. And tonight my colleague and Minister Éireann O'Riordan spoke about Section 37 and what is now called the Equality Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2013. And as he rightly said, there was a number of backbenchers, including myself, who decided that we really needed to do something, Lascian Corla, about the issue of the chilling effect that the legislation has on people who may be LGBT, people who may be divorced, people who may be divorced and living with somebody else, God forbid, or somebody who may be not married and with children and working in the health sector or working in the education sector. And to put that into real terms, I think it's not acceptable, and it was never acceptable, that somebody should be able to walk into work and go into the staff room, whether that be in a hospital or in a school, and not be able to talk about where they were at the weekend, or who they spent their time with at the weekend, or about the person that they love so much. And whether we like it or not, the law that exists as of now, and will be changed on foot of this bill being passed, allowed for that position to be created for people in Irish society. And for many people, and I know from during the referendum, no more than my colleague said there too, and I know from my own personal life, that I know that there are many examples of people who would not, and still don't, even though the referendum on same-sex marriage has passed, would not feel completely comfortable in walking into their staff room and to speak about their private circumstances. And I think that's such a shame in a modern society where people still feel that way, and we need to do something about it. And yes, the marriage referendum in itself has gone a long way to shining a light on the fact that we're all more the same than different. And I think this piece of legislation, albeit small and technical in many ways, will make a significant difference to a very small cohort of people who work on behalf of the state, teaching our kids, fixing us when we go into hospital, to make us better, who feel they cannot live their life fully. And just to give you an example of it, I mean, I know of some people, myself personally, I wasn't one of those. I always felt comfortable that you need to push the boat out, and I know not everybody feels that way. And I was very privileged to work in a staff room whereby I didn't mind going into it for 13 years, and particularly at a very early stage, and pushing the boat out, and speaking about, a relationship I may have been in at the time. And thankfully, like most like-minded and decent people in our society, they accept that. But where that doesn't prevail in a particular workplace, it can be very hard for somebody to make that jump, Lascian Corla. And I think what this piece of legislation does in itself is it legitimises those people going into work in the morning and allowing them to feel that the state is watching our back. The state is watching our back on this, and I'm entitled to be here, and I'm entitled to be the person I am, and nobody can prevent that under law. And I think that has to be really welcomed. And I think what's really important about the piece today is that it doesn't in some way infringe upon religious institutions. And this isn't a battering of religious-run institutions. It's about recognising that religious-run institutions have rights, but the people who work in those have rights that must be respected too. And I think that, a phrase that you used, Minister, in your speech was about an appropriate balance. And I'll go one further and say that the law is about creating a proportionate balance between the two, respecting the rights of the individuals who run those institutions and also those who work in it. And in a nutshell, what we are really doing is we're making society just that little bit better for some people who just don't feel it's right there for them now. And I hope when this is passed into law, and I believe, and hopefully it will be done soon, that this will take away the shadow that some people feel that they have to live in at this stage. And I hope that over time it encourages people who work in places such as schools and in hospitals to feel that they can be proud of going in and speaking about the man they love, or the woman they love, or the marriage that they're going to have soon enough, and not feel that it's going to prevent them from getting a promotion in the future, or that if they're not CID'd and they're only temporary in the particular school that they're in, that won't in any way affect their possibilities of being returned to that school the following September. And this law, in some way, watches their back and allows them to feel like full citizens in a way that they still feel right now that there's a little blotch on their homework paper, so to speak, that prevents them from being treated like, as full citizens. And I think I really appreciate the point in it which speaks about raising the bar. If a religious-run institution such as a church or such as a school or a hospital feels that their ethos is to be undermined, it acknowledges that, but they really must prove it in a way that it will be undermined. And let me tell you this, as a man who happens to be gay through no fault of my own, no way in the 13 years that I worked in a secondary school did I ever try to undermine the religious ethos of that school. If anything, I embraced the mission statement of that school, and I worked with that during my time there to ensure that the mission statement was achieved. And my sexuality did not interfere with that mission statement of that religious-run institution, and neither does any teacher or nurse or doctor who works in any other religious-run institution. And can I just say, the harsh reality up until now is that some people really, really do fear that they may not be allowed to continue on in their job. And I had my own personal experience last County Corla many years ago, and it really, really frustrated me. An anonymous letter was sent to the school, to the principal, highlighting that John Lyons was gay, and did you know that? And there was a little bit more in the letter than that, but that was the bulk of it. And for a school where I gave it all, I got up early to go to school, unless I had I was going to say a hangover, but I've just said it, unless I wasn't feeling well in the morning or you were just having a bad day, I gave it socks, and I gave it more than I was getting paid for, and that's what most teachers do, to be fair. And to see that letter come in, and I knew how awful the principal felt when he told me about the letter, and he felt so uncomfortable because he just felt that this shouldn't be happening in society, but he felt he had to let me know about this letter that arrived in. And the two of us sat down in the office, and he says, John, I don't want to tell you this, but I must show you this letter that arrived in. And for a while afterwards my support for that school where I gave everything and more was on the ground, and I wondered, why should I give so much to this place that is now essentially putting me in a position whereby if I was to ever one day apply for principal, that it may have an effect on me. And that's a real life example of how the current law, Last County Corla, does affect people. That chilling effect does actually exist. I know of another person who is now divorced and works in a school, and she was told by somebody that was threatened essentially by somebody in her community that she would remind the principal that now you are living with another man. Now that's not acceptable, and there are two real-life examples from people living in this society who feel that, because of decisions that they have made in their life, or through no fault of their own, that they have been persecuted and may be at risk of not being able to complete or work in the place that they're in. Can I just say, as a member of the Labour Party, and I'll move on because I'm sure Last County Corla, there may be some other speakers on in our time that may want to come in. As a member of the Labour Party, Last County Corla, this is one of the reasons why I joined the Labour Party. No, not to amend Section 37, but for the types of things we try and achieve when we are in government. And we haven't been in government very often, but when we are, we always put at the forefront of what we do laws that try and make people's lives much more better in society, and in some way that they can say that they're proud to grow up and grow old in that society. And our mark on our last 4.5 years so far, Last County Corla, in this society, when it comes to social change, we have done as much as we can, and I'm very proud of the things we've done. And I'm delighted to see that we are finally getting to amend Section 37 to ensure that another cohort of people who live in this society, their life will just be a little bit better. It's not costing anything, but it's going to mean a lot for those people. And finally, just on one other piece that I'd really like to agree with Last County Corla, and I commend the Minister for including it, is the issue of rent supplement. It is absolutely sickening, and I see it on a daily basis, whereby people, since I've been elected, and actually before I've been elected, where landlords, without any reason, have just point-blank refused to take tenants who are on rent supplement. They are good, decent people who have come to me and have been refused because they are on rent supplement. Now, I see it on daft.ie, I see it on every other website that advertise homes. Pretty much every house and apartment at this stage has a line under it after it's advertising saying rent supplement not acceptable. Now, those people, to me, are acceptable people in society and are good, decent people, and through no fault of their own, didn't have a place to go to, but in the rented sector. And in most cases, I know landlords are decent people, but I think, to be fair to people who have a right to have somewhere to live, I'm glad that the Minister is making a statement on this to ensure that that day can no longer exist, whereby somebody who is in need of a place to live and who only has the financial support of rent supplement in order to pay the rent, that they will no longer be barred from trying to find some accommodation. And I look forward to working with people who are in that position, Lasciam Corla, to ensure that landlords take these people on, because like any other person, they are just good, decent people who happen to find themselves through no fault of their own in rented accommodation, and it's not acceptable for any landlord to refuse somebody because it's rent supplement. I'll finish there, but can I just say I commend this bill. I am really supportive of this bill, but most importantly, I'm delighted for the people who may walk just that tiny bit taller when this bill is passed. Thank you, Lasciam Corla.